This is Fearful Frequencies. Let this broadcast begin. The Whispering Forest was a legend, but one that felt too persistent to dismiss. Matt Warren, a graduate student in folklore studies, had stumbled across its most chilling figure, the Slenderman. A towering, faceless entity with impossibly long limbs, the Slenderman was rumored to haunt dense forests, leaving cryptic notes and abducting those who wandered too far. What intrigued Matt most was how the stories spanned centuries and continents, appearing in woodcuts from 16th century Germany, Native American oral traditions, and most recently, internet forums. What began as a simple research topic for his thesis spiraled into an obsession. Matt found himself awake at odd hours, scrolling through forums and archival websites. Grainy photographs and blurry videos of a faceless figure surrounded by static haunted his dreams. He mapped disappearances tied to the legend, noting a peculiar pattern: clusters every 20 years near Oakwood Forest. It wasn't just urban legend material. Something tangible seemed to exist behind the myth. His professor, Dr. Eleanor Fisk, tried to caution him. Urban legends have a way of consuming their researchers, Matt. You lose perspective. But this isn't just folklore, Matt argued. There are primary sources, documents from centuries ago. What if there's something deeper here, something real? Dr. Fisk sighed but approved his proposal. Be careful, Matt. Folklore thrives on belief. The more you believe in something, the more power it has over you. Determined, Matt rented a cabin near Oakwood, a town infamous for its proximity to the forest. The locals avoided speaking about it directly, but when pressed, they shared unsettling stories of whispers, strange disappearances, and a pervasive sense of being watched. Matt arrived in late autumn, the forest shrouded in a damp fog that seemed alive. The cabin was modest but serviceable. He filled it with maps, notes, and printouts of the cryptic messages attributed to Slenderman. Some were warnings. Don't look behind you. Others were eerie invitations. Join me. At first, his days were uneventful. He visited the local library and combed through records of missing persons. Patterns emerged. All the victims were last seen near the forest, and many left behind fragments of notes scrawled on trees or scattered on the ground. By night, he analyzed his findings, but the isolation began to wear on him. The forest seemed to breathe just beyond his windows, its presence oppressive and inescapable. One evening, as he sifted through old forum posts, Matt found a photograph he hadn't seen before. It depicted a group of children in the 1980s standing at the edge of a forest. Behind them, faint but unmistakable, was the figure of Slenderman. Static distorted the image, making it hard to tell whether it was doctored. The caption read, "Only I came back." Something about the image unsettled him. He shut his laptop and stepped outside for fresh air. The forest loomed, silent and still, but he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. He laughed nervously. "Just paranoia," he muttered to himself. The first note appeared the next morning, pinned to the door of his cabin. It read, "Leave while you can." The handwriting was jagged, almost childlike. Matt scanned the area around his cabin, but the forest offered no clues. Was it a prank? A warning? He stuffed the note into his pocket and tried to focus on his research, but his thoughts kept drifting back to the message. Over the following days, the occurrences escalated. At night, he heard faint whispers outside his window, too distant to make out, but undeniably real. His flashlight flickered unpredictably, and his laptop screen would occasionally flash with static. He found another note on the edge of the forest, "Always watching." Despite his growing unease, Matt pressed on. He documented everything: the notes, the whispers, the strange symbols he found carved into tree trunks. One symbol appeared repeatedly: a spiral. It wasn't unique to Slenderman lore, but seemed to hold significance. He traced its origins online, uncovering references to doorways and binding spells in various occult traditions. Then came the dream. Matt found himself wandering the forest, the trees towering impossibly high, their branches reaching like claws. Notes hung from the trees, each bearing a warning. Run. Don't look. It's too late. The air hummed with static, and in the distance he saw Slenderman, motionless but undeniable. He woke drenched in sweat, the sound of static ringing in his ears. Convinced that the notes were more than warnings, Matt hypothesized they were clues, breadcrumbs leading to some greater truth. He ventured into the forest with a notebook, flashlight, and camera, determined to document everything. The air grew colder the deeper he went, and the static from his recorder intensified. He found the first note on a tree. No escape. He photographed it and moved on, the weight of the forest pressing against him. The second note was tied to a low branch. He's here. Matt's heart pounded, but he couldn't turn back. He continued deeper, the forest growing darker despite the midday sun. The third note was scrawled directly on a rock. Don't look behind you. Matt froze. The temptation to glance over his shoulder was almost unbearable. The static surged, louder than ever. He held his breath and forced himself to move forward, refusing to turn around. The forest felt alive, the branches creaking as though something was moving through them. By the time he found the fourth note, he was trembling. It was nailed to a tree and read, "You've seen him." Matt snapped a photo, but his camera glitched, the image corrupted by static. His flashlight flickered, and for a moment, he thought he saw movement in the corner of his eye. The clearing came suddenly, as if the forest had guided him to it. In the center stood a stone altar, its surface etched with the spiral. Around it lay fragments of notes, all bearing the same chilling phrase, "Completed." The spiral on the altar was almost finished, just one line missing. Matt stepped closer, his hands trembling. The whispers grew louder, forming words he couldn't understand. His mind felt foggy, his body moving as if controlled by something else. He reached for the altar, his fingers tracing the spiral. The moment he completed it, the air seemed to collapse around him. The forest warped, the trees twisting and bending as though alive. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall, faceless, and impossibly close. Matt tried to scream, but no sound came. When a search party ventured into the forest weeks later, they found only Matt's camera lying near the altar. The photos it contained were corrupted, but one image stood out. The spiral, glowing faintly, with a blurred figure standing beside it. His journal was discovered in his cabin, its final entry reading, "The door is open." Oakwood's forest remains silent but alive. The notes still appear, fluttering on the wind, waiting for the next wanderer to follow them into the depths. Slenderman waits, his presence woven into the fabric of the forest, his victims mere threads in a tapestry of fear. And now this broadcast has come to an end. If you enjoy these stories and want to support Fearful Frequencies, subscribe on Patreon at patreon.com/fearfulfrequencies. Link in description. So in the dead of night, when the world is silent and shadows grow long, there are frequencies that tap into our deepest fears. Tune in if you dare, and let the whispers of the unknown send chills down your spine. But beware, once you hear the haunting echoes of these tales, you may never listen to the silence the same way again.